All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we're talking about the New York Jets, and I am joined by Jeremy, Jets Chaos. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good. It's exciting times to be a Jet fan. I'll tell you that.
It really is, and it hasn't been that way in the past. Last year, they had a fantastic defense, and I think surprised a lot of teams. And this year, all the expectations are heightened because of Aaron Rodgers. Now, first of all, before we get into kind of him being there, what was that just kind of in between of him saying he was wanted to play for the Jets and then actually it happening? What was that time like for you and other Jets fans?
Oh, it was a wild time. It was a scary time because you know a fan base is never united on any one thing. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of people wanted different things. I would say the majority wanted Rodgers. There was no question that that the majority, if you polled the fans, wanted Rodgers. I think the scariest part, the most intense part, was when we were talking with Derek Carr, and they got together the management with Derek Carr and had the dinner and everything, and we were in that kind of position where we had a gamble. It was we make Derek Carr an offer, and make him a Jet, or and give up on Rodgers because we're not sure of what he wants yet, or we gamble and we take the chance. Now, personally, I think looking back in hindsight, we had already hired Buddy Hackett, and I did I just call him Buddy? We already
Yeah.
hired Paul Hackett. I think that there was some texting, and there was probably some knowledge already on the Jets side of things, and that it's not a coincidence that Derek Carr signed, and then within 24 hours the Jets were flying to talk to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like you hear like Sauce Gardner and all these, players on Twitter say that they could relax, and but then it took a little while, and finally it got done, and it looks like he is happy. He's there early now, working with receivers, which he had not been doing with the Packers for a few years, and so now, welcome to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. What are you seeing so far that you like Aaron Rodgers, obviously in camp and just all the things that he's saying in the media right now with the Jets?
Just that he seems enthused. He's no longer angry. I mean, he's like for the Packers the last couple of years, you kind of felt that he was almost punishing them. Like he ever, from the moment they drafted Jordan Love, there was this love, hate relationship, kind of like this conflict where he felt betrayed by the team. I think that was pretty well known around the NFL. I think it was very evident. Um, what I like is he seems happy. He came with Jets colors on. He came, all the so-called things people have said about him, that he's lost his passion, that he's all about himself. Every one of those things is being proven wrong each day. Within a few days of him being there, he's out to going to Nick and Ranger playoff games. And he's already telling Sauce Gardner. He goes to a game with him, and they asked Sauce Gardner, "What'd you talk about?" And he said, "Hey, I think I could really help you. I'm going to help tell you and educate you and let you know exactly how other teams are going to attack you." He goes, "Because I'm going to tell you what I would do and how I would attack you after seeing what you did last year." And Sauce Gardner was totally appreciative of that. So he's already connecting to those younger players. I think that the fact that he already has his favorite offensive coordinator that he did so well with in Hackett, Lazard being there, and Cobb is a veteran in camp, just to, I don't know what his role will be, but just to have that presence to help settle in, to feel comfortable, I think is all a really good thing. And I think he's been awesome since he's been here. He said all the right things. He's doing all the right things. So we're excited.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and it's so interesting how quickly. Obviously, as a Bear fan, I talked to a lot of Packer fans and everything, and how quickly they're pivoting and saying, he was bringing the team down last year. Maybe he's had a down year, and so easy to, like in hindsight, to say that now. And yes, he was a little bit injured, but maybe disinterested, and now obviously he has that chip on the shoulder, and I, as a Bears fan, I know. is all Bear fans know that when Aaron Rodgers has a chip on his shoulder, he's going to do something great. And so when you look at, what you expect from him in this offense, are you expecting him to just kind of throw a ton, or are you, what are you expecting from him in this offense so far?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to go against the grain of how the team was built. Like, they're built to be a running team. There's a reason they have Brees Hall. There's a reason in the last two drafts they've invested. In the last three drafts they've drafted a running back. There's reason to believe that they're still going to be more of a running team, that they're going to be a pound the ball team. And I think it's better for Aaron that way. Like, I think that he is aging. He's not the same guy. And I think it's good if you can establish a running game, especially if Brees Hall gets healthy, if he's healthy right away from the start of the season, and the offensive line stays healthy, which is a key for the Jets because that hasn't been the case. If we could take away the other team's ability to, just force them to keep, 8 guys in the box. I mean, just keep, really force them to keep guys in the box to stop the run. I think then we set Rodgers up to be very, very successful. And it's vice versa. If they're stopping the run, by stacking the box, then Aaron Rodgers can open it up for the running game by just tearing it. So I think it'll be an as-need basis. I think their preferred strategy will be establish the run, control the ball, and then on third down and key situations, they know they have a quarterback who can execute. If the run's not working, they know they have a quarterback who can throw the ball 40, 45 times, and you could still win.
Well, yeah. So speaking of the running backs, obviously we're still kind of waiting on Brees Hall. Number one, is he going to be ready for the start of the season?
Well, they say they are confident, but they're not confident enough to say or promise that he is. I think most Jet fans, most of us, because of the nature of the injury, are going under the assumption, like, we would not be shocked if he's put on the PUP list and he's not there till week 6. A lot of Jet fans feel we should make a deal, whether it's trading for Henry or or making that move and kind of let this be a transition year, like the end of Henry's career, where he can do some carries, share the load, and then kind of get Brees back to full health this season, and then in the future he becomes the main primary back. But the Jets brass is not going along with that. For right now, they're insisting he's way ahead of schedule, and they're optimistic that he could be there week 1. And there have been guys who have done it in the past. We've seen guys do it. So it's just a wait and see. But I do think that the rest of the running back room for the Jets is strong. None of them are anything like Brees Hall. But if the offensive line is healthy and is above average and a good at run blocking, and they execute well, we have running backs in Mecole Carter, in Bam Knight, and now in Israel, who drafted out of Pittsburgh, who definitely could be effective.
Yeah, so you look at the running backs for the Jets, and before they drafted Brees Hall, Mecole Carter showed a lot of promise. Obviously, Brees Hall is, kind of that 3-down back. He's dynamic. He's all of that. But then toward the end of the season, when Brees Hall was hurt, they went to Bam Zonovan Knight. And does that mean that the Jets, lost a little bit of, trust in Mecole Carter? Or talk about those two and just the pecking order there in the Jets running back room.
Well, I think that they both had different roles. They're different style of runners. So I think that Bam Knight was more of the replacement of the role that Brees Hall was playing. He's more of a one cut and go running back, similar to Brees Hall. He's very quick in making his decision, whereas Mecole Carter was being used as kind of like out of the backfield, receiving, doesn't go down at first contact as a running back, but also is a little bit more patient. He's not as quick to take that one cut. He'll do multiple moves. So they were kind of playing Brees Hall and Mecole Carter that way off each other. And I think that the reason Bam Hall ended up seeing more of the plays was simply because their preferred style, and the person who's going to get most of the work, is the one cut and go style of running.
And with their new running back, Israel, is it Abanikanda?
Abatakanda. I like to say it the way the announcers during the college games yelled it. Like, so even if you say it wrong, people don't know. They're just like Abatakanda, you know. So you just get excited and people don't notice as long as you get all the syllables in.
And what
But
are you seeing his style being? Is that more of the Brees Hall style, or what are you seeing from him?
definitely more of the Brees Hall style, Bam Knight style. He's definitely he like if you watch a lot of the tape on him, if you watch highlights, he's a one cut and go explosive running back. The dangerous thing about him is if he gets past the defense, he's gone. Like nobody's catching him. You know, the speed is outrageous. You know, now you just have to see if the ability to take the contact, ability to make decisions translates to the NFL, because that's the wild card. That's just unpredictable for any football player.
Absolutely. And you know, talking about earlier, we talked about the wide receivers and you know what they're going to be to Aaron Rodgers. It's been you know, neat to see, you know, Garrett Wilson already, you know, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure to, you know, establish that connection early. When you look at the pecking order, is it Garrett Wilson and everybody else in that room there?
Um, I would say that it is like there's different ways to break down a wide receiver room, right? And some teams have an elite one and an elite two. You know, you look at teams like the Dolphins, right? You look at teams like the Bengals, and they have these two elite wide receivers that could, you know, both be WR1s on another team. And then as you go down the depth chart, it might shrink up a little bit. Whereas the Jets, they got their, you know, Garrett Wilson is the clear WR1. But even though they don't have an elite number two, they have a really deep and, you know, I want to say versatile set of four receivers backing them up. Like, so you have Lazard, who's this big bodied guy that, you know, Rodgers is almost used like a tight end at times where they've lined him up in the slot. You have your gadget guy, Mecole Hardman, you know, that could do those sweeps and replace Berrio and probably what Elijah Moore was doing. And then you have Corey Davis, who's still super solid, right? As a good number two on any team, you know, as another, you know, fairly big bodied player. So there's a lot of depth there. And even when you say like Denzel Mims is fighting for a job, and I know that the results haven't been there, but most people that really have watched and understand know that Denzel Mims, you know, you can't teach 6'3", 6'4", 4'3", 4'4" speed. So the physical talent in Denzel Mims is there. And for him to be a WR5 or fighting for a spot with Cobb for some role on the team shows the depth of the team.
Do you expect you know, either Mims or Davis to get traded at all this offseason?
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think that Mims would bring in the value. I don't know. If there would have to be somebody, some organization who really loved him in college, that really had him rated high, that is really in tune with the situation, really looked at the situation in New York and what the Jets did, and you know, and how they used them, and that would still believe a lot. Otherwise, I just don't see how they're going to get the value for him, considering he doesn't cost them anything. And he does have all that natural talent. If there are injuries, he's a guy who can definitely come in, and with a quarterback like Rodgers, who knows? But Corey Davis is one where is probably the most likely. If you said, who do you think if anybody got traded, it would be? It's not that I'm expecting it, because I think they like having the depth, especially with the Jets' luck with their injury history. But it would be the least surprising to me if it was Corey Davis.
Now, speaking of value, I always like to, you know, talk to a team, you know, fans and podcasters about their fantasy football targets. So when you look at, you know, adding Aaron Rodgers to this offense, we talked about, you know, really still the focus, the Jets on the run. Who are some viable fantasy football targets in redraft leagues, number one, and then kind of go into dynasty leagues second?
Okay. So I think Garrett Wilson is you know, the premier Jet that fantasy football owners should salivate over. And the reason I say that is 83 receptions, 1,100 yards with the 32nd best or worst, however you want to phrase it, quarterback play in the league with an infirmary of an offensive line, right? Down to their fifth and sixth tackles, a makeshift offensive line, and he still gets 1,100 yards receiving and still gets 83 receptions. What's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? So, and plus, like you said, he's elite from the group. He's the clear number one, clear WR1, but in a team with enough weapons that you can't focus or key on him too much, because A-Rod will still eat you alive with Lazard and Hardman and the tight end Conklin and again, when Breece Hall is healthy. I think the second person that would interest me is Breece Hall. Now, he might not be there for the first few weeks, and it is a gamble. It's more of a risk pick, but the payoff, the ceiling is tremendous, because he was on his way where he probably would have been the offensive rookie of the year had he not gotten hurt.
So dynasty wise, I had Breece Hall, and
Yes.
I actually have a lot of young running backs on my roster, and I always try to look at trading pieces and having obviously talent everywhere. And so I ended up trading Breece Hall in my dynasty league. I still have Javonte Williams. I still have a number of young running backs. And when you look at Breece Hall, he's already been injured. And you look at just what's behind him. What about picking up an Israel Abanikanda, and stashing him on your dynasty roster? Would you kind of advise that right now?
I would do it late, maybe. He might be, just as much as any other guy. I'm not going to. I don't know again to see how he's going to translate to the NFL. He's certainly interesting. If depending on the spots you have and who's there, he's as a stash guy. He might be the guy. I honestly believe that he's not really going to have the opportunity to ever be a premier back, because I think at some point Breece Hall's going to be healthy. I think Breece Hall is the dynasty guy to have. He's the guy that you get like less of a gamble, because maybe he'll miss 6 games this year, but you're going to be very happy with him moving forward. I really believe he's going to be an elite top 5, like one of those very special franchise changing running backs, which he was. The Jets record, everything the Jets were doing up until the point he got hurt was 100% Breece Hall. He was their offense.
So you're telling me I made a bad trade?
You might regret it if you're trading Breece Hall. You might regret it. I mean, I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but if you ask me, from watching him play every play, and even before he took his first NFL snap, I was probably more excited about him than maybe any running back the Jets had ever drafted. I loved him in college, and I was so confident he was going to be special. And 5.2 yards a carry right from the start. He was special. So I think as long as he gets healthy in the future, he's going to be a very special running back.
There's something about those Iowa State running backs, David Montgomery coming before him, and Breece Hall, solid. Now, really, obviously, you have a lot of Cyclones on the team. You have Alan Lazard, former Cyclone wide receiver, and now, looking at the NFL draft, your first round pick was an Iowa State player. Talk about his fit, Will McDonald's fit in this defense and some of these other picks that you're excited about.
Yeah, so I think that Joe Douglas stayed true to his word as who he is. And I think Jet fans, if they didn't realize it from the past drafts, this was the exclamation point of, I take the best value. I take the best player on the board. I think the Jets, specifically this year, was one of the first times, although they had, fans had identified needs, I think that they were more in a position and had less needs than they ever had in the last, 10, 15 years. So I think that they were in the best position ever to finally really, truly be the team that took the guy that they thought was the best guy on their board. I don't think that they were very desperate for an edge pass rusher this specific season. But if you look at the contracts and you look at the situation of this team moving forward, I think that it fills a very important role, because they're not going to be able to hold on to everybody. And for the Jets scheme and for a Robert Saleh defense, creating pressure and pressuring the quarterback is 100%, the key for this defense to have any chance of being successful. So I I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Jets take an edge every single year. They will constantly keep that pipeline full. I do expect him. I don't think he's gonna get more than 35% of the snaps. I don't because that's not the way they're schemed. They rotate. They have too many other good players. But I do think that they picked him for a reason. They see something in him. It was when you watch him and how he was used in college, when he had the opportunity to play wide, in the wide gap, he was insane. So there's a possibility. There's a possibility he could end up being their best pass rusher in passing situations. Rookie year, it's possible, which would be amazing.
See, I love that. We'll get back to the draft, but you were talking defense, and looking at last year's draft. I mean, just the explosive players, all the players that they got last year. You look at, I mean, they got Jermaine Johnson last year, and he's a second teamer now, right? And Carl Lawson's there. When you look at this defense, I'm not sure, is Quinnen Williams going to stay around as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's the normal negotiating tactics. I think it's blown way out of proportion. He's playing the game that's the way this generation of players are. They use Twitter, they use social media as part of their way of showing displeasure, part of their way of trying to gain leverage with the team, put pressure on utilize the fans to put pressure on the team. Joe Douglas is not letting Quinnen Williams get away. This is the guy that's going to get paid. And they have to, because they haven't kept a draft pick and paid a draft pick for a second contract in so long. They need to set that precedent to the younger players on the team to say, hey, you will be rewarded, when, if you work hard and pan out. And I think the Jets have no choice. They're going to sign him. But Joe Douglas is very patient. He's not impulsive. He will wait until he believes it's not going to get any better for me than this. But as long as he thinks there's still leverage on any point, any negotiating point, he's not going to rush into signing him out of panic.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like there are a lot of key big name free agents still out there. Still a lot of question marks for a lot of teams. Obviously, Quinnen Williams is one of those. But when you look at this defense, would you say the strength is in the secondary, or where's the strength of this Jet defense?
Wow, it's really hard to pick the edge of the secondary. I mean, unless you're including safeties. Like, if you want to talk cornerbacks, you look at our top three. When you look at Sauce Gardner and Reed, and then Michael Carter II, I mean, it's a pretty amazing trio. I mean, it's extremely, extremely solid. I think Sauce, considering he was a rookie last year, I mean, is on his way to being a Hall of Fame player. I mean, it's just what he did last year was unbelievable for any player, yet alone a rookie. And then I think that it overshadowed Reed. I think a lot of people don't realize how well DJ Reed played. I think he's under the radar. So if I was to compare that room, the cornerback room, to the defensive line, I might give it to the cornerbacks because there is some lack of depth in the interior of the Jets line behind Quinnen Williams. But if you included safety and said the entire defensive backfield, safeties and cornerbacks compared to the entire defensive line, I would say the entire defensive line is the strength of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, I mean, there are names all over that defense. So what about the weakest point? I mean, would you say the linebackers are kind of the weakest point? I mean, but they've got solid linebackers too, don't they?
Yeah, no, it's free safety.
Free safety.
That's our biggest question mark, because most of our safeties, even the safeties we have, they're all stronger inside the box. So like even Clark, who they obtained from Baltimore in a trade, he can play everywhere on the field. He can play free safety, but he's strongest in the box. They'll utilize him at linebacker, by the way. That's why they didn't pursue Quan. They're probably gonna use Jeremy and Sherwood more, and they're going to probably utilize Clark when they want to play a third linebacker. You have to remember the Jets play a lot of 2-5. So it's a lot of times that they only need two linebackers on the field. And they usually go with three safeties. So they'll use Clark in that role as like a hybrid. Then you got Whitehead, who's an inside the box safety. The only, I think their best free safety is Tony Adams, who is just a young guy that they love, but the fans don't know yet. Like, we haven't seen evidence, but we know that they love him, that they're very confident in him. I think the fans are still a little iffy on it, and we really haven't, seen it proven on the field yet. But we think that the fact that the Jets didn't go harder for a pure free safety is pretty much shows the confidence they have in Tony Adams.
That's interesting. Tony Adams is kind of looking. He's out of Illinois. I mean, when you look at the two defensive, backs that were drafted in the draft this year, Illinois really is, producing and putting some good defensive backs in the NFL recently.
I agree.
And so when you going back to fantasy, and I'm not sure if what leagues you're in, if you're in a fantasy football league that does have defenses and special teams units, how high would you tell people to draft the Jets defense?
I'm not going to say they're ready to be one of those teams where you have to be the first one that jumps a little earlier to get that special defense that you're going to start every week and that's going to score points. I don't know that they're there yet. I think this could be the year they break out. I think that their issue, as good as they were last year, they're not a very good fantasy defense because they don't create the turnovers. I think that's going to change. I think this year they're going to get a lot more pressure. I think I think that other teams are going to be playing from behind because of Aaron Rodgers. And I think there's going to be a lot more turnovers. I think they are probably, from people that are not as much in the know, that just go by history in the past few years, they're probably going to be slept on. They're probably going to be undervalued. But at the same time, I don't think they're a team I would jump on them early for. They're not like, an 85 Chicago Bears or the Baltimore Ravens, the way they've been in certain years where you jump in and grab to have them early because they're going to actually be a huge difference maker on your team. But they could be a sleeper where you get some really good value in the middle of the pack when the other owners start going defense.
Yeah, it is interesting because, when I'm picking defenses in my leagues, I always kind of look at the whole picture because, obviously as a Bear fan, I talk to a lot of Packer fans and they're like, oh, our defense is great. They may be, right. But a big part of it also is the other side of the ball, the offense. How long is that offense going to have the ball? Because you can have a great defense, but if the team is not going to continue to sustain drives and have a lot of 3-and-outs, that defense is going to be tired. And when you look at the Jets, you're expecting, more, longer drives and all of this than probably you did with Zach Wilson or anybody else under center, aren't you?
That's probably more than the players. The number one reason, if you said, Jeremy, why will the defense be better this year? It's because our offense will be better. Because there's no question about it. If you watch the Jets last year and you go over the games, you can see it. You could see how dominant they are and then how they get worn down because of the 1, 2, 3-and-outs and because they're on the field too much and they start to break down. And absolutely, when you take them off that field for an average of 2 drives a game less, and give them more rest and less 1, 2, 3-and-outs. Now, that's going to be maybe the biggest factor of all, regardless of how good Will McDonald will be or how our second-year players are going to step up from their rookie years.
Well, going back to the draft then, were you surprised? Obviously Will McDonald was, a great value. And then they did get Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin in the second round. But were you surprised that they didn't try to go offensive line right away in the first round?
Yes, it was surprising. I mean, it wasn't super shocking when New England traded out and the Steelers traded in to take Broderick. I think more of an expectation for us was that we were going to trade back. I think a lot of us expected they're either going to trade back or they're just going to say, screw it. We're going to take Anton Harrison. And nobody complains about a team reaching if the guy works out. So if Anton Harrison, if they would have picked him and he becomes a good offensive tackle, a really good offensive tackle, nobody remembers later on that they reached to get him, that they took him too early. I think we expected to trade back and to take a guy like Anton Harrison, or at least maybe even trade back, get an extra third or second round pick, and get McClendon, who had slipped. I think we were all surprised at the pick, just because that was the one identified need other than center, but we knew we weren't going center first round. The one identified need I think most Jet fans agreed with was offensive line, because there's so many question marks on our three guys. We have three guys, but not including, Warren, who we picked. We have three guys, but they all have question marks attached to them.
Yeah, I mean, who has the biggest question mark on that offensive line then?
I would say at this point, it's really hard. It's not an obvious thing. I don't think Jet fans, if you did a poll, I think it would be divided. I think it's Max Mitchell, because I don't think we truly understand the cause of his clots. Like, I don't think that we have the details. I don't know that if he has to be on blood thinners. I don't know how this is going to impact his career. Whereas Dwayne Brown, played in agony. He played, and now he gets to come in healthy, and so he showed that he's an available player. If you look at him in his career, he's probably I'm the most confident, just based on what he was able to tolerate last year and play through. And then Becton, I think the difference with Becton is, I know he missed the last 2 years, but I think the difference is this year, he's not going in camp to get in football shape. He's in football shape now. He's in the best shape of his life. So I think there's a lot of optimism for Becton, but we also are kind of like, PTSD, where like it's hard to trust because the last 2 years.
And that tackle, I mean, spot's going to be important. The whole line's going to be important for an aging Aaron Rodgers. Obviously he's shown he can get the ball out quickly. He can, get the ball out in a few different ways. So I think that's going to help, just having a veteran like that. But the offensive line is huge when you talk about just timing and everything on with the receivers and everything as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, and Joe Douglas is an offensive line GM. Like, when we got him, the understanding was that he's going to focus on offensive line. This team is very, just like if you look at Philadelphia, where he came from, if you look at Baltimore, this team is very, very hyper-focused on the trenches, the defensive and the offensive line. So I think they have a lot of confidence in what they're seeing right now with Dwayne Brown. Obviously, they know more about Max Mitchell than we do. And I think that, Carter Warren, like, we weren't shouting his name, but, afterwards, in hindsight, when you do the research and you find out that he was a likely second round pick if he wasn't hurt, you're like, oh, he's healthy now, and he would have been a second round pick if he had not been hurt. Made Jet fans feel a lot better. And Max Mitchell played very well when we needed him in the emergency. The plan was not to play him year one; it was to put some muscle on him. He did very well, and we got him in the fourth round. So there's a lot of optimism that a guy who could have been a second round pick, and Joe Douglas is starting to prove, look, I know how to evaluate offensive line talent out of college.
Well, speaking of optimism, it's hard not to add a player like Aaron Rodgers to have supersized Super Bowl type expectations. How are you managing that right now? Obviously, before training camp, gets going, how are you managing that, personally and within the fan base as well?
Well, I think that the one thing I try to remind everyone is that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be MVP Aaron Rodgers for us to be super successful and be a contender as a team. Like, if you remember Peyton Manning, when he won a Super Bowl with Denver, he was far from the prime Peyton Manning. The difference in what I think Jet fans have to remember, what I remind Jet fans or what I remind myself is that we had the 32nd best quarterback play in the league last year. We were the worst. So, and at one point before the team really got decimated with those injuries, we were already scaring people. We were already looking like we were going to be a playoff team. We were legitimate. People were like, oh my God, they're really good. So when you consider their defense now, when you consider the offensive line coming back healthy and having an opportunity to not be decimated with injuries, you have to look at it's really not so much, does Rodgers have to be an MVP type year? It's look at the jump just an average Aaron Rodgers is. Just Aaron Rodgers, even his last year play, which I know is his worst or maybe been the worst in forever, but that would still be an incredible jump from where the Jets were and what they got. And I would assume regression to the mean. I think that it's more likely you're going to see an average of his numbers the last 3 years. Like if you combine and did an average of his stats for the last 3 years, that's probably the most likely outcome that you're going to see with Aaron Rodgers this year. And those numbers, if you do the math, are pretty impressive.
Yeah, and when you look at Aaron Rodgers, and it's so interesting. Obviously, you heard Jets players say that he had. I think Sauce maybe even said that he had the swag coming in, and I think going back to the Packers now, they're talking about Jordan Love, and he may very well be good, right? But we don't know yet. He does not bring week one what Aaron Rodgers does. Even a depleted Aaron Rodgers, he brings that confidence that the players can, he's done it before. And so, just having his, that swagger there, obviously that raises the expectations, but also, I'm sure, when you talk about the rest of the players, they don't want to let him down either.
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. I think that when you're in that huddle and you're playing offensive line for the New York Jets, there's a big difference if it's Zach Wilson in the huddle calling the play and Aaron Rodgers. Nobody wants to be the guy that gets Aaron Rodgers hurt. Mm-mm. No one wants to be that guy. No one wants to be the receiver that drops the pass. No one wants to be the running back that fumbles the ball and ruins the drive, right? They all, there's going to be a response to him, but there's also just the mental aspect of the game. When you're in the huddle and you look up, how comfortable each player is going to feel when they're looking into the eyes of someone like Aaron Rodgers. They're going to trust him. He's going to keep them calm. He's going to keep them, even keel. He's not going to let things fall apart. He's going to, lead them through adversity. I mean, all those attributes are there. As far as Jordan Love is concerned, you can't expect that from him, obviously, and nobody has the right to expect that from him. But also, it's just we don't know how good Jordan Love is going to be. And if you're a Green Bay fan, a lot from most of their fan base, they don't remember what it's like to not have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and they might not have the perspective how rare that is. Mm-hmm. So they're excited about Jordan Love, but they have to understand, he might be good. But you're used to Hall of Fame quarterback for 30 years, and the odds that you're going to hit a third time in a row and he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, it's not even fair to him to have that expectation.
Well, speaking of expectations, when you look at the division, I'm not quite sure. Are you expecting a division crown, or what team worries you the most about division within the AFC East?
Well, absolutely the Buffalo Bills. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in football after Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And I say might be because every year it changes. They have off years and on years, but he certainly has the potential to be the best the best quarterback in the NFL. Like he could even end up the MVP and be better than Mahomes on a given year. I mean, the talent is there, the respect is there. Josh Allen has all the you have to assume that he could potentially be the elite quarterback in the NFL. So for that reason, and their defense and their experience with winning and their hunger, the Bills are definitely the team that we have to really jump over, I think, to win the division.
What about the Dolphins? I mean, they did a lot to kind of improve themselves. I mean, are you, worried about them at all this year?
Yeah, I'm worried about him. I am. If Tua is healthy, and their coach is a very good coach. Comes from the same place as, comes from that San Francisco Shanahan tree. Mm-hmm. He's a smart guy. They looked really good before it fell apart a little bit on him and Tua with the concussions. There was a run there where they looked very dangerous. I don't think they're an easy team to beat out. I'm not sitting there saying no problem, no worries. If Tua has this health issue, it's very concerning. But if he finds a way, if they can protect him, if he can avoid concussions, if he could stay healthy, they are a very good team. They have very, very good receivers. They have some great players on defense. They're not a pushover team. And second year in their system, they did pretty good in that system for a first year. A lot of teams don't do that well first year in that system. So I'm not taking them for granted at all. Not at all. So, yeah, I mean, I'm considering the Miami games very big games.
Well, yeah, in the NFL, you can't take any game for granted. I'm sure, obviously, like all of us, you've kind of looked through the Jets' schedule. Um, what when you look at this, I mean, as an outsider, I look at it. It's a tough way to start, but conceivably, it actually seems to get easier toward the end of the season. What do you kind of, what are some games that you're most worried about this year for the Jets?
Definitely Philadelphia.
Hmm.
Historically, I don't think we've ever beaten them. They are also the hardest matchup.
Mm.
So matchup wise, I actually think Cleveland is a tough matchup for us as well. I think the Jets are are built for teams that have great quarterbacks that
Mm.
rely on the
Hmm.
passing game because of our cornerbacks. Because like if we do our job, our defense, we're putting the quarterback under pressure, and we got Sauce and Reed and Michael Carter II covering your receivers. It's a nightmare, and we showed that last year. Josh Allen did not do well against the Jets in either game. He did not have Josh Allen type games. We did very well against teams like that have very good quarterbacks. We struggled with Cleveland. We struggled with Baltimore, and it was the running games of those teams that hurt us. And even in the Detroit game, we were great until they beat us with the running game. So the Eagles match up the best because we are a team. If there's one weakness on our defense, we give up the short stuff. We give up the short part of the field, and sometimes we're susceptible to the run. So definitely the Eagle game is number one. Obviously, the playing in Buffalo. Um, Miami is always tough. That's just our history.
Mm-hmm.
Like Miami is always going to be tough games for us. And then I'd like to think, and I'm confident, like I'm just pumped up like any other Jet fan that we're going to get our revenge and we're going to pummel the Patriots. But the reality is we haven't done it in 5 or 6 years. So until
Mm.
we actually do it, I'm kind of living in the world of until we do it, I'm going to keep my mouth shut about it, and I'm not going to talk trash about the Patriots yet until we actually do it. I believe we are a much more talented team than they are. I believe that we should be able to beat them in both, at home and away. But until we actually prove it and put our money where our mouth is, I don't think we should go around, screaming it yet.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Patriots, and a lot is going to be on, Mac Jones, his development, and everything. But you look at the Jets defense, they should be able to take care of it. But obviously, that's why they play the games. And, speaking of that, at the Giants, really it's kind of a homish game, right?
Right.
Um, are you worried at all by them, and their progression, with the new coaching system and kind of everything that they're doing?
Um, I mean, I don't think it's an easy game. I'm not underestimating it. I expect to win. When I talk about that matchup problem, though, you got to consider Saquon Barkley. You got to
Hmm.
consider that. So they might actually be a little bit of, you know, a good match as far as on their for their side, like that they are built to play a defense like ours because they can play that short game. But again, I expect to win. I don't think it's a pushover game. Like a lot of Jet fans just are like writing W, and I'm like, well, wait a second, guys. These coaches are pretty good. They did a hell of a job last year. I think if we come out and play the game we're capable of playing, I think we're capable of beating any team in the NFL. Like I think the talent now is there that the Jets have the potential and the capability of beating anyone. And I would expect, unless we beat ourselves, if we come out and play our game, I expect to beat the Giants. But I understand that football doesn't work that way. You don't always come out. You're always not the best version of yourselves. So they have to go out and they have to execute and they have to do it.
Well, speaking of that, you talked about, tough places to play, tough teams to play. I'm looking at the week 4 game at Denver, and I'm actually thinking that Denver actually could be much improved. They had a solid defense regardless, and that's at Denver. I think when you look at in the altitude, I mean that can make a difference. I'm really interested to see how Aaron Rodgers and how the rest of the team will kind of do at Denver. You know, actually in that week 5 matchup, actually.
I'm glad we play him earlier because with a new
Mhm.
coach, sometimes teams gel and get better as the season goes. So I think one good thing, the positive, you're going to take a positive about having to go to Denver is we're playing him earlier in the season. Yeah, look, they have a good coach. He's not he's not a godlike coach. He's not a Belichick. I mean, let's face it.
Mhm.
They won one Super Bowl with Drew Brees. Not to take anything away from his, like how New Orleans has been and Short and
Mhm.
Payton, but I like to keep it in perspective. He's not a guy who's won multiple Super Bowls and went to different teams and won Super Bowls. He
Mhm.
had Drew Brees, future Hall of Fame quarterback. He got one ring. So like keeping it in perspective. Um, but Russ Wilson might be improved. Like he
Mhm.
may have humbled him, and that's where I'm worried the improvement could be too. Like, and their offensive line got a lot better. They did a great job of addressing their offensive line. It's always hard to go to Denver. Their schedule is not easy. That's going to be a tough game. I'm
Mhm.
expecting it to be. Part of me is dreaming that Rodgers really is going to make us look like Green Bay, that we're going to be better than we think we are. And just like Green Bay did for so many years, we're just going to roll over teams and just, put up tons of points. And we're going to have this great defense. The only time Green Bay gave Aaron Rodgers a top 5 defense, he won the Super Bowl.
Mm.
So that sticks with Jet fans. We all got that on our minds. He had a top 5 defense once, and that was the year they won the Super Bowl. So we're excited about that. So either these games are, I'm preparing for these games to be dogfights, but at the same time, there is this possibility where the Jets are going to blow it up. There's a possibility their defense is going to go from 5 to like first or second in the NFL
Mhm.
because they're not on the field as much, and because they got a lot of rookies that are going to be second year, and we know that some guys take big jumps. Then they got a lot of second-year players going into that third year. So a lot of them, it's not like, oh, they're running it back with the same guys. They're running it back with young guys that are improving. Carl Lawson is, that last year was an Achilles recovery year. So he
Mhm.
might come back better this year. So, part of me has this belief, like this hope, that we might really be a special team and the difficulty of the schedule is not going to matter because rather than us fearing the other teams, it might end up being the other team should be fearing us. And that's exactly what Rodgers said. He said, he goes, we're going to be the shark.
Do you get a sense, it's hard to look forward to the next year, but do you get a sense already that this will be the only year that Aaron Rodgers is in New York, or do you think that there's a possibility that he could be more than 1 year with the Jets?
I think the most likely scenario is 2 years.
Mhm.
I think it might be one. He might leave after 1 year. He might even stay for 3. But I think, like, if I was a betting man, if there were odds in Vegas on how much longer he plays, I think the favorite is 2 years. I honestly do. I think that, as a matter of fact, I think if he retired after 1 year, I think it would be the most likely reason would be we won the Super Bowl. And he
Mhm.
decides I'm going to go out right now.
What would that be like? I mean, if the Jets won the Super Bowl, I mean, are you preparing yourself for that?
I don't even know how to prepare for myself for
Yeah.
that. I mean, like it's hard enough. Even like in 2009 and 10 when we made the championship game, it was hard to believe it or conceive it what was happening. I mean, I've been a Jet fan over 40 years. I'm so used to losing that even when they're winning, it's hard to believe and it's hard to see us as real. Um, so I don't know what it's going to be like. I just know that if we win the Super Bowl, whatever price we paid, whatever salary, contracts we had to restructure, whatever we did, however it affects the future, will not matter. Just get us the trophy. If that trophy, we get that trophy, it's worth whatever happens after that. Because
Hey, I'm calling.
yeah.
I say I'm calling out Jets Lions Super Bowl, and this is a Bears fan saying that.
Wow. Wow.
I I don't know if I truly buy into the. I think the Lions are going to win the division. I think they're going to be improved. I do think if you don't have a veteran quarterback, it takes steps to kind of do well in the NFC. I think the Eagles are going to be right there. But the Jets, if they can, obviously, they should get to the playoffs. I mean, with Aaron Rodgers and kind of all the pieces they have. Is there a sense that, after this 1 or 2 years of Rodgers, that Zach Wilson may have some viability as a starter, or is it just kind of foregone conclusion that he's going to be gone?
I think it's going to be really difficult. I don't see
Mm-hmm.
the path, and here's why. I believe there's a possibility. I'm not one of the people that say it's impossible. I believe there's a lot of talent there. Like I don't. I mean, I think the arm talent is real. I think there was even little flashes of it. I think it's all in his head. It's all mental. It's all, and it's about processing and will it click? Some quarterbacks it never does, and some it does. I think the bigger obstacle is we're not going to pick up his 5th-year option. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
why would he stay?
Mm-hmm.
He's been butchered by the Jets fan base. He's been humiliated here. The only reason he would stay is Aaron Rodgers works with him 2 years, helps make him a better quarterback, helps get him feeling better about the organization, and get him excited to redeem himself in New York. That would be the only way, but it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be easy, and it's much more likely that he's never going to be the Jets starting quarterback again than it is he's going to be the Jets starting quarterback. But I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah, that great point on that. If he has been, butchered in the media, maybe he's just not cut out for that, for that market.
Yeah, Jet fans are rough. We're a passionate fan base, and that's good and bad. There's a pro and con to that. The con is, unfortunately, part of our fan base thinks it's okay to go on Twitter and harass players and their family members, and that's the really dark side of the Jets fan base. Makes a lot of us very angry. Like a lot of us, especially the YouTube content providers, we speak out against it all the time. Like, hey guys, it's a game, it's a sport. These are people, these are human beings. And I understand that we're passionate. I understand that we're frustrated and tired of losing, but you can't send the guy's mother texts.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't do that. And I do think it matters. I think that there was a New York Yankee, a pitcher they wanted, who refused to sign with the Yankees because of the way his family was treated in Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Even famously, this is Ken Griffey Jr. Didn't want to go to the Yankees. Yeah,
because of the way they treated him.
Yeah, yep. The way actually they treated his dad was interesting. Wow. Yep. So I mean, you look at you look at it. The Jets, should be in the mix. AFC is going to be tough. It will be an intriguing season. Starting with Game 1 versus the Bills to really see where they're at. Aaron Rodgers has typically been a slow starter with the Packers. Are you worried about that game at all?
Well, I'm worried about the game because we're playing against the Bills. It's to play them week 1 right off the bat. I would like to believe that we'd rise to the occasion on 9/11, but last year we did not against Baltimore. It's a little different when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, though. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be it's the world is watching. It's the first game of the year. Both teams are going to play it like it's a Super Bowl. It's going to be like a playoff game atmosphere. So I expect it to be really, really close, like dramatic, crazy fourth quarter ending. I'm going to probably lose a couple of years of my life from the stress. So, and it's one of those kind of games that's going to go either way. So we'll just have to see. But I'm not worried about, what kind of start he's going to have. I think he's got that chip on his shoulder. Mm-hmm. I think he realizes the importance of that first game, and I think he's going to be ready.
Oh, it's going to be an exciting season. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you again, Jeremy?
You can find me at the Jet Lounge Chaos. So it's Jet Lounge Chaos on YouTube. On Twitter, it's at Jeremy Cravat 2 or Jets Chaos on Twitter. And I do shows every Wednesday night. It's called the Wacky Wednesday Show, 10 p.m. Eastern. And I usually do shows Sunday night, but I didn't really have one scheduled tonight on my channel. But Sunday nights I do later in the evening, like 9 p.m. Eastern on Sundays.
Absolutely. Well, like and subscribe. It's going to be must watch this year. I'm going to get my popcorn out right away and just be watching all of it. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us about the Jets.
Oh yeah, I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to come on anytime, and good luck to your Bears.
Absolutely. Once again, it's been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on the New York Jets. Thanks again, Jeremy from Jets Chaos.